What? You thought we got our calcium from drinking milk? Haha! Milk is for barbarians.
What's up, guys? Welcome to Plant-Based History, Episode 3. You might notice that I had to take off my shoulder guards here. They reeked of industrial contaminants, so I don't want to lose consciousness while I'm doing this video.
So let's get into it. You've probably read or watched headlines recently about the Roman Gladiators eating a vegan diet. Perhaps even in the recent documentary The Game Changers, which I do think is excellent, by the way. While this bold claim is effective at getting clicks, views, and likes, I think it muddles and misdirects the conversation we should be having about diet. It's quite simply a red herring. No, the Roman gladiators weren't vegan. Moreover, being vegan or vegetarian in the ancient world would have been tremendously difficult, although not unheard of. Take a look at figures like Pythagoras as an example. Luckily though, we don't live in the ancient world. We don't have to base our diet on restrictions present in the past. Any diet that harkens back to what humans ate in their natural state, or at some point in the past, is fundamentally flawed. This is an appeal to nature fallacy. Dietary choices should be based on a balanced analysis of the nutritional value of the food, its monetary cost, and its environmental impact. With their thrifty but abundantly nutritious diet, I think the Roman gladiators present an interesting historical case study for such an analysis. Just because the Roman gladiators weren't vegan doesn't mean that their diet wasn't predominantly plant-based, which it indeed was. In fact, almost entirely so. We can learn a lot from these stalwart heroes by examining what they ate and the advantages this conferred. First, let's take a look at the archaeological findings that spawned this whole discussion in the first place. In 2007, a seminal article was published in the American Journal of Physical Anthropology by Austrian doctor of forensic medicine, Fabian Kahns. This was followed by another publication in 2014 by the same author and a team of researchers. The discovery of the remains of 67 former gladiators allowed for these studies to be conducted. In addition to this, numerous other non-gladiator, age-matched contemporary specimens were examined as a sort of control group. The strontium content of the gladiators' bones was double that of the remains of their non-gladiator contemporaries. Additionally, strontium to calcium ratio, in addition to the results of spectroscopy analysis of stable isotope ratios in the gladiator remains, indicates excellent bone health and a low intake of animal protein. According to the study, this excellent bone health is likely due to the gladiators' high intake of grains, like wheat and barley, and beans and pulses, in addition to plant ash or bone ash supplements, which would have been tremendously mineral rich as well, and we'll get into these a little bit more later. The researchers were aware of historical accounts that refer to the gladiators as hordearii, such as the historian Plinius. Hordearii translates to barley eaters. Since barley was considered an inferior grain to wheat, this term was likely meant to be derogatory. This is what makes the studies so fascinating to me. The researchers were able to prove out historical texts with real-world scientific analysis. We can also gain further insight by looking at the dietary composition of the Roman legionnaires, some of the most formidable fighting men in world history. Roman legionnaires' rations were 78% grain-based by calorie, and consisted mainly of wheat and barley. As I will demonstrate, grains are gains. Nothing compares to the efficiency and longevity of grains as a protein and carbohydrate delivery system, and the logistical model of the Roman military proves this out. As indicated in the studies reviewed earlier, the gladiators ate a predominantly plant-based diet. There's really no reason why any of this should be controversial. These are incredibly nutritious foods, as I will demonstrate. The bulk of the gladiators' diet was grain. This was most commonly barley, but it's conceivable, and there is some evidence to support it, that wheat would sometimes be fed to gladiators based on availability. Beans and pulses were the second largest food group in the gladiators' diet. The Romans commonly cultivated fava beans, chickpeas, green peas, and various forms of lentils. I think it's also reasonable to assume that commonly cultivated vegetables were also part of the average gladiator's diet, likely incorporated into their soups, stews, and mashes. The Romans grew many vegetables recognizable today, including cabbage, kale, various forms of broccoli, as well as carrots, radishes, turnips, and other root vegetables. Cabbage was widely regarded as a health tonic during the Roman period. Mushrooms were also widely eaten. The primary fat was olive oil. If you do a quick search of gladiator plus vegan, you'll likely find a plethora of articles referencing the research I presented earlier. You will also find much skepticism about the nutritional adequacy of a diet predominantly composed of grains. Specifically, there are numerous doubts about protein, iron, calcium, and other minerals. As I will demonstrate with an example menu composed of mostly grains and a selection of other commonly eaten plant foods at the time, the diet of the gladiators was nutritionally complete, and as a matter of fact, quite healthy by modern standard. I've used an example diet of roughly 3,500 calories, as this was the amount of calories provisioned to Roman legionnaires while not actively on campaign. While on campaign, this number could increase up to 6,000. Considering the skeletal and estimated muscular strength of the remains studied by Fabian's team, the gladiators were likely eating a diet of at least 3,500 daily calories. For the percentage of grain in this example menu, I've settled on 78%, which reflects the composition of the Roman legionnaires' daily rations. I will use farro as the grain. Farro is a modern version of the emmer wheat cultivated by the Romans. So let's take a look at the proposed menu for the gladiator. As you can see, it is predominantly grain-based, with some beans and a small amount of commonly eaten vegetables from the Roman period. It also contains a small serving of olive oil. To be completely historically accurate, this diet would also likely have contained garum, or fermented fish sauce that was widely eaten by the Romans as a condiment. Since I don't have data on the nutritional content of garum, I've excluded it, but it likely would have been a good source of omega-3 fatty acids. Fortunately, the gladiators seem to have plenty of omega-3 intake even without it. First, let's look at the macronutrient composition of the gladiator's diet. This diet is 75% carbohydrates, 14% protein, and 11% fat. The high volume of carbohydrates would have fueled the gladiator in his vigorous workouts, and would have allowed for sustained energy during long bouts of combat. Glucose is the body's preferred energy source, so this makes sense. Sorry friends, but a ketogenic diet would only get you killed on the floor of the Colosseum. So let's look at protein, or protein in layman's terms. As you can see here, the United States RDA for protein for adult males is more than double, at over 145 grams. Moreover, the whole argument about plant proteins being incomplete is shown as the farce it is. All amino acids are present in plentiful quantities, even the muscle-building amino acid leucine. Let's take a quick look at fats. Even though no food sources traditionally considered particularly rich in omega-3 fats were included in this menu, we've nonetheless exceeded the RDA for omega-3, in this case for ALA or alpha-linoleic acid. This is due to the high volume of whole natural plant foods, which generally have an ideal omega-3 to 6 fat ratio. You'll also notice that this diet is exceedingly low in saturated fat. With minerals, the RDAs were absolutely slayed across the board. Any concerns about iron deficiency should be put to rest here. Even calcium is present here in abundant amounts, but is nevertheless slightly short of the RDA. This could be boosted by consuming additional leafy greens, which I really omitted for the sake of realism and simplicity, or, as the gladiators likely did, by consuming a drink made from plant ash, which is a way to concentrate the minerals contained in vegetables. You can think of this like an ancient Roman green smoothie. Kale Caesar. Again, you can see how nutritionally complete, and really even overabundant, this diet really is. The only significant nutrients missing here are vitamin D and B12. Vitamin D would likely have been produced naturally in sufficient quantities, as the gladiators trained for long hours in the Mediterranean sun. Vitamin B12, on the other hand, could have been obtained via the gladiators' unchlorinated drinking water or wine, and also from the dirt on their vegetables. This could also have been supplemented by the small amount of animal products they ate. So no, gladiators weren't vegan, but as slaves they had a simple, cheap, and predominantly plant-based diet that resulted in remarkable healing capabilities and strong, resilient bones. We can learn from this, and we, as modern humans, can also easily ensure that we get adequate amounts of B12 via fortified foods and supplementation. We aren't bound by the restrictions of the ancient world, but we can combine ancient wisdom with modern abundance to craft a diet that balances thrift, nutritional adequacy, ethics, and environmental concerns. The spirit of the gladiator can live on in the choices you make at the table. Are you not entertained? Thanks for watching episode 3 of the Food History series. Keep your eyes peeled later this week for the Gladiator Grain Bowl. And remember to subscribe to Plant-Based History so that you can get your history while it's still fresh.